Hi, my name is James Hudson and I'm a performance nutritionist. I'm fortunate enough to get to work in elite sport with Gloucester Rugby in the English Premiership, as well as being a performance champion with Vitality Health. My background is in biochemistry and sports nutrition, and I recently completed my PhD at Liverpool John Moores University in molecular exercise physiology. Prior to that, I was also fortunate enough to get to play rugby professionally for 15 years, playing over 250 games in the English Premiership, European and international competitions. I'm going to talk to you about the subject of caffeine, the athlete, but also with yourselves as everyday athletes and how you can use it to aid your performance and your training. When it comes to caffeine, it is one of the few evidence-based supplements or dietary aids we can find which can improve performance. It can improve our strength and power outputs either in training or competition. It can also help with our cognitive function, our brain function and our ability to execute skills in team sports. But it can also reduce our perception of how hard we're working. So it can be particularly effective on a number of fronts and is a really good part of your toolbox when it comes to increasing your performance with your nutrition. The issues though that we need to think about when we talk about caffeine are about how actually it can get into our system and how long it lasts and how much of an effect we need it to have on our performance. Now, if you're an everyday athlete and you've got a long day at work, you might be looking for that little bit of a boost before you go and hit the gym, go and do that set of HIIT training or class together, or maybe it's go and play a team sport with some friends. If you're looking for that little boost, caffeine is absolutely a good avenue to go down, and it can definitely aid your performance in all of those events and situations. But what we need to think about is how we actually get it into our bodies and how it can then be effective and not impair our recovery. This is where chewing gum comes in. Caffeine gum is a superb form of delivery to get it into our system. Now, when we chew gum in our mouths, we produce lots of saliva, and our mouths have got plenty of blood vessels around them, which can aid in the absorption of caffeine very, very quickly into our system, and it can start having an effect in improving our performance. It can have an effect in as little as 5 minutes, and it reaches peak levels in our blood at around 20 to 25 minutes after we've started chewing. Now, if we compare that with drinks or shots or capsules, tablets of caffeine, that can take at least 45 to 60 minutes to actually peak in our systems and to feel their full effect. The difference in that is huge. And actually, when we're looking for a quick, short burst of energy aided by caffeine, gum provides the perfect platform to be able to do that. So when we're looking for that quick boost of energy in the form of caffeine, we need to think about the delivery system. This is where chewing gum comes to play. When we chew gum, we produce lots of saliva in our mouth, and our buccal cavity, or oral cavity as it's also known, contains lots and lots of blood vessels, which can really speed up the absorption of caffeine and get it into our systems nice and quickly. And this is evidenced in the research which shows that we can get a meaningful amount of caffeine into our systems via chewing gum in as little as 5 minutes. And it actually reaches peak levels in as little as 20 to 25 minutes as well. Now, if we compare that with drinking something containing caffeine or having a shot or taking some capsules, that can take at least 45 to 60 minutes to reach peak levels and at least half an hour before it really reaches a meaningful level in our bodies. So if we're looking for that quick burst of energy and to aid our performance, whether it's hitting the gym, lifting some weights, or whether it's going and doing a HIIT class or going and playing a team sport with friends, if we're after a quick burst of energy aided by caffeine, caffeine gum is definitely something we should think about. Because we're not swallowing the caffeine product, it's not having to go through the normal route of metabolism, which is where it's absorbed in the stomach and the gut and then metabolized in the liver before it's sent to the various tissues where it can have an effect in our body. So by going via the oral cavity, we have a much quicker absorption and rate of appearance in our body so that it starts having that effect. Whether it's increasing our strength and power, or whether it's improving our cognitive function, our brain function, these are all positive effects on our performance and give us that little boost that we might be after. Now, it's really important that we also think about the total amount that we need to take. How many times have we guzzled down that caffeine-containing drink to only be lying in bed later that night wishing we hadn't because we can't sleep, or experiencing bouts of anxiety or unrest when we should be relaxing and recovering into the next day. So how much do we need to have a meaningful effect? Well, the latest research shows us that actually for going into the gym and lifting some weights, we can get improvements in strength, power and endurance in that weight training with as little as 1 to 2 milligrams per kilo of our body weight. That's the way that we like to think about it. So as an example, a 70 kilo person might need somewhere between 70 to 140 milligrams of caffeine. As a reference point, one piece of BLOCKHEAD gum has 50 milligrams in it. So as little as 2 to 3 pieces of gum will have a full effect and aid that session performance. If we compare this to the huge amounts that we see in some pre-workout supplements, where there can be at least 200 to 250 milligrams in one serving, and many canned drinks which have at least 160 milligrams in large cans, that could be excessive. And again, that knock-on effect into our recovery, where sleep is impaired, could be devastating in terms of how we then move through into the next day and into our next session. So let's think about, when we do use caffeine, what's the minimum effective dose that we need, and how can we get that delivered in a quick, simple and easy fashion. Now, these two elements, when we come to consider caffeine, of timing and total amount of caffeine, are exactly the same when I work with athletes who are elite. It doesn't matter whether you're an everyday athlete, weekend warrior, or an elite athlete. When you're considering caffeine, think about those two elements. So first up, we'll think about the total. Now, when it comes to elite athletes in a big event, like a match of football or rugby, which might last 80 to 90 minutes, or if we were talking about a big endurance event, we might think about the total amount being a little bit higher than we've previously mentioned. So up to around 3 to 4 milligrams per kilo of body weight. So for a rugby player, that might be somewhere between 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine in total around the match. Now, they might like to consume some kind of drink at 45 minutes to an hour pre-kickoff, and that would form part of their plan. But where caffeine gum comes in, it's an excellent adjunct into these breakages in play, is just before kickoff, but also at half time. So to maintain high caffeine levels, or to give players that little bit of a boost as they go into the second half, we'll also find that athletes find real use in chewing the gum at half time, or in the last 5 to 10 minutes before they go out for kickoff before the match. There are also a number of players who don't enjoy taking high doses of caffeine, because again, it can heighten that feeling of anxiety and nervousness and jitters, which is not what we want on a match day. So by prescribing a really acute dose using caffeine gum, we can get them to have the option of using it just before kickoff and at half time. At half time, we're trying to get some fuel into them, have those tactical conversations. So chewing gum is a really simple, easy method to do that. And it can lift their cognitive function, their execution of skills in the second half when they're fatigued, but also help that perception of effort, how hard they're feeling working. They can lower that as well. So it's an excellent way of getting that quick, acute dose into them. And again, by not having a huge, great big dose, if they don't want to, an hour before kickoff, it can reduce that level of wakefulness after the match and hopefully promote them getting good quality sleep in recovery. If we think about big endurance events as well, a marathon, a triathlon, Ironman, they're multiple hour events. So where do we want to get that boost of caffeine in? We don't want to be taking a really, really high dose an hour before we start the event, because we're going to see a big decline in that level in our bodies and a decline potentially in performance in the latter stages of it. So again, when I'm working with endurance athletes, where I find caffeine gum to be an excellent adjunct to their program and their plan is when they need a boost. Could it be in a transition in a triathlon where they need that bit of a boost and a pick me up as they hit into the bike or onto the run? Or could it be in a big long running event where they get into the last hour, 45 minutes of it, a quick piece of chewing gum, 2 pieces of gum will lift that caffeine level in their body, reduce how hard it's feeling in that latter stages and push through the barrier to get to the finish line. So it doesn't matter if you're an everyday athlete, an elite athlete or a weekend warrior. You can harness the performance enhancing benefits of caffeine quickly and simply using caffeine chewing gum such as BLOCKHEAD gum. It's a flexible tool which can stay in your kit bag and be deployed at a moment's notice.